So after months of research, from which I learned a lot of things, and just the curation of what I've already learned, I have made this guide for the UN Charter, which is the first document we're going to start with. Again, please just pause the video where you feel like to read this actual guide, because I'll be going over the important parts and explaining them to you so that it's quick and I don't take much of your precious time. Okay, one fact to remember here is that United Nations was the second attempt at conserving the peace of the world. The first one was League of Nations, which failed, and the reasons are written here. Now, quickly moving forward, I want to discuss two important things here. Okay, number one, just take your time reading this. Hence, amidst the chaos of World War II, the United Nations was formed on 24th of October 1945 following the ratification of the UN Charter by the US, UK, Soviet Union, France and China. Right, now, two things which I'm going to explain to you here is, number one, let's discuss the keyword ratification first. Okay, when a treaty, convention or document is made, right, there's two things a member state can do. Either they can ratify it or they can be a signatory to that document. What it means is, say, document, treaties, conventions have articles, right, and you're supposed to comply with them. When you say that you're a signatory of the document, obviously you will comply with that document to your bestest possibilities, but you won't have any consequences on your compliance with that document. Basically what it means is that you agree to the principles of that document, you agree to the fact that you're going to comply with it, but you're not going to bind yourself legally with that document. Okay, so again, consequences like, you know, moral backlog can be there if you don't actually comply to treaties, but then again, legally there's not something that somebody can do if you don't comply to that certain document you are a signatory of. What happens when we're talking about ratification here is, when you ratify a document, right, it means that you will incorporate its principles legally and you're bound to, you know, comply by the principles, articles of that certain document. Okay, wrapping up on that, I really want to discuss about these 5 countries mentioned here. Now, Soviet Union basically refers to the Russian Federation. Okay, alright. US, UK, Russian Federation, France and China, they are usually okay, they are called the P5 countries, and I hope you would have heard that term floating somewhere. Again, what does P5 mean? This is a term used in the United Nations Security Council, which I believe will be discussed further in this document. These countries were the winners of the World War II, and one thing I really want you to just accept here is that United Nations is going to be biased towards these countries, right? This is a very basic understanding that you just have to, you know, ground yourself in, else you're gonna get really frustrated moving forward. Again, once you accept this, that yes, indeed it is going to be biased towards the winners for many reasons. Again, the World War II winners, their financial capacity that they provide to the United Nations to actually, you know, keep it functioning, and a lot of many stuff that just happens because of these countries existing, right? So yes, indeed the United Nations is going to be biased, but there are a lot of treaties, there are a lot of laws, you know, that just neutralize this effect to a really great extent. So don't be scared if a P5 country starts blubbering. Right, now quickly moving forward to the preamble of the United Nations Charter. Again, one thing and a little bit of motivation here, it's going to be very simple, it's not going to be that hard. Don't take it as something of a mountain here. Just listen to my explanation, make your notes. If you have any doubts, please don't think they're stupid. Drop them down in the comments. I will be answering to them. Now, starting with the preamble, again, you can pause the video to actually read the whole 6 points. I will be focusing on 2 or 3 of them. Okay, so starting from point number 1. Okay, another ground rule I want you to just set here is that when I'm putting an emphasis on one thing, right? Okay, what does an emphasis mean? Right, let's just read the first point out. One ground understanding to be set is that the United Nations does not want any wars and considers wars a very big thing, which they are. Okay, now, when you talk about this 3-letter word, war, right? The best and the most optimistic thing you can do now, and this will really help you in the long run, would be that start seeing things as the impacts, consequences, reasons they are, right? So suppose there's a war, right? So what are the impacts of a war? Again, humanitarian, it will cause a lot of destruction to humans, right? There will be economical problems, there would be social problems, a lot of problems will exist due to this just existence of war. Once you do that, you will actually understand the severity of the problem and will actually start solving the all aspects of it, right? Even if you suppose solve the social part of a problem and do call of actions, the actual technical part, the economical problems and the law loopholes that actually cause that thing to happen are never going to be solved. So the problem will actually exist, right? Again, repetition of the point would be that start seeing things as the impacts and consequences they cause. Another thing I'd suggest is really, when you're doing an MUN, right, try and put yourself in the shoes of what you're trying to suggest, right? So literally be very practical about it. Take your time with your research. Take weeks if you want, right? And you will need weeks, I will tell you that. It's not, please don't sit and go to a committee on a one night research. It's not cool. Right? So when you're actually researching, right, try to put yourself in shoes of other countries. If you're suggesting a solution, put yourself in the shoes of somebody from global south. Will they actually be able to implement your whatever you're suggesting? One another thing I would say is that don't suggest your domestic policies to be implemented, right? Again, you can praise your domestic policies, you can tell that they have worked very efficiently for you, but when you're standing in a global forum and suggesting things to actually help the countries that are in need, right, suggesting your domestic policies can be a bit tricky, because for a policy to work, again, see, that is where this point will actually apply. When I say a policy has to work, right, a policy is not just a few sentences, it's a thing that makes an impact, right? So what will be the economical impact of that particular policy? What will be the social impact of that particular policy? When you start thinking, and taking such things into consideration and making this whole mind map flowchart of thing, right, you're actually going to understand the topic and you're going to be able to solve it. And third and the last tip, because I remember it right now, is that start using preambles as a checklist. So suppose you're going into a UNCSW committee, which is United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, right? Try finding the documents that are very popular in that committee. Again, there are a lot of documents that are popular, right? So suppose in a UNCSW committee, one of the most famous documents stands to be the CEDAW, right, which is the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination, of all forms of discrimination against women. Take out its preamble, right, and start ticking off your points. The solution that you're proposing in the committee, or the solution that you think is your solution to that problem, which is the agenda, is it ticking all the factors? Suppose, let's just take the example of the preamble we have right now. Does your solution, but just take a tip, this is just an example, using the charter as a checklist would be too general, but again, right, does your solution ensure the dignity and the worth of a human? Does it ensure the equality of men and women? Does it keep justice and respect as obligation? I believe doing that would be really, really good, because it would refine your solution at parts. Now, right, points to focus on is the sixth one, which basically says that the armed forces can not be used, and the employment of international machinery, which I would request you to just read the actual explanation, definition of it. It should be there for economical and social advancement of all people. One thing a delegate can propose in the committee would be that the use of armed force, basically a country use that armed force to save in common interest, and then they try to manipulate and drive their argument towards that point. See, what you can do with this is you can actually raise a point and go on to saying that, which is obviously what I've mentioned as well, that your word back would be that multilateral beneficence, which is a good word for common interest, is defined collectively by a committee, not just by one member. And the second thing is that the preamble can never override binding articles. Again, it's the aspiration, but do not underestimate things that can be used on the moral grounds, right? There's a very common misconception of that it's not binding, that it's just policies, that it's just this mere thing. But when you actually start adding these mere things, right, they create such a powerful force collectively. Because if you're not morally upright in a global forum that demands morality, at least basic morality from you, you're actually going to face a lot of criticism, right? And even that criticism, you have to really reply back to that diplomatically. So if they don't, they'll actually lose their marks on the reply. Now, we'll start with the Article 1. So this article basically creates the checklist for the United Nations. Alright, so basically Article 1 mandates things like international peace, development of country relations. Again, it works as the checklist for the United Nations. Now, the important point here is that, let's read this line. Article 1 creates goals for the United Nations. I believe that is understood. Dignity cannot be invoked for legal grounds of military action. Basically, what this point means is dignity mentioned in the Article 1 of the UN Charter cannot be invoked. Basically, any harm to dignity cannot be eligible enough to, reciprocate back with military action. Again, mentioned in the article is a term called acts of aggression, which can politically be defined subjectively because they want to promote propaganda, but legally it is defined through UNGA Resolution 3314, which I've mentioned here. Again, this article just stands as the goals and wants United Nations to be that center for creating a harmony and promoting universal peace. The point of Article 1 not overriding Article 51 would be explained later, which Article 51 is quite important, so I do want you to follow the series along for the explanation of every single article. Again, I do believe this video will be on a bit of a longer end because the tips I gave you, but they are very important and I'm not going to compromise on the impromptu tips that I come up with. So I hope you were able to understand what I wanted you to understand. As if any doubts, any queries, or any part of the video that wasn't very clear enough to you, please just drop down a comment. I will take time and explain them to you as best as I can, because again, that is my motto. So yeah, that's all for today. Thank you.